there's always this question of, well, how do you define wokeness? And I mean, really, wokeness is just the word we're using for leftism. It's just a new term.
Thank you. Someone finally admitted it. Someone finally just said it out loud. Yeah, we're replacing it for thing we don't like. Yeah. Wokeness equals things we don't like. So when there's a movie, if the movie happens to have, a black Jedi, that's thing I don't like. Even a black Sith Lord. Yeah, even if they're the villain. I don't want black people to be the villains either, okay? They wouldn't be able to rise to those ranks. Oops, no, wait, that's the thing that I'm saying about. Okay, so if they worked hard and they really, really actually wanted to, they picked themselves up from their bootstraps, they could become Sith Lords. So really, I think it's probably a cultural thing as to why they're not doing that. New study shows that wokeness is correlated with sadness, depression, anxiety.
Interesting story. The New York.
And again, so is the problem wokeness or is it ignorance is bliss?
Post has this is the headline. Woke people are more likely to be unhappy, anxious, and depressed, a new study suggests. The article says psychological researchers in Finland have created an assessment to help measure an individual's commitment to principles of social justice and have made some surprising findings across the Finnish population, including a negative correlation between progressive ideals and levels of happiness. Their findings, published in the Scandinavian Journal of Psychology, suggest other Western nations may see similar patterns among their socially conscious citizens. Study author Askari Latinen, a senior researcher at Invest Research Flagship Center at the University of Turku, remarked that the woke discourse has since worked its way into Finnish discourse, so on and so forth. We don't really care about that. However, the most concerning finding was the relationship between mental health and agreement with the woke ideals. Specifically, researchers found a high prevalence of anxiety and depression in people who believe the statement, quote, if white people have on average a higher income than black people, it is because of racism. More broadly, they found that those who identified as less left-wing were most likely to report lower mental well-being. Now, so this is interesting. There's a sort of an obvious chicken or egg dilemma here, which others have.
Well, before he gets to the chicken and the eggs, I was going to ask, so what's the alternative to that statement? Because, like, the cool thing about learning, in large part due to the incredible work by the Human Genome Project, that race doesn't exist. No such thing. Humans made it up. Social construct and whatnot. Part of learning that would be that, okay, so if society in the way that it is, if the median wealth of, say, white families in America is 10 times higher than that of the median wealth of, say, black families in America, but there's no such thing as race. These are basically, people trying to characterize other humans based on, a whole bunch of attributes, the amount of melanin you have, the shape of the eyes, the shape of the nose, things like that. Then something else is going on, right? Because technically, at the end of the day, there should be a reason for that. There could be a lot of historical reasons and systemic reasons that would explain it very easily. Because, again, there's no such thing as, like, black people, just by virtue of being black, are going to just commit way more murder than white people because of genetics. Oh, no, that's super racist to think or say. Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. Yeah, 100%. So someone said the sentence, that racism would explain why there are these massive differences. Then being on the other side of that is essentially, nah. Nah. But if you know those things, you figure them out, and then all of a sudden you learn more about it, you read a bit, and then you start reading more, or you start watching the news more, you start getting in tune to all of these different things and how they're all interconnected, and then all of a sudden it all starts to make sense. That's why my PS5 doesn't cost as much. It's nice. There should be thousands and thousands and thousands of incurred costs for all the amount of things that happen to take place to put all those pieces together around the world. But it turns out, because of a lot of different economic systems, exploitation, the ability to mine cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo, things like that, it turns out it becomes a little bit more affordable for the consumer in the West, right? But a lot of different things happen along the way to make that happen.
I've pointed to. And so you have to ask yourself, is it that people become unhappy because they're woke, or is it that they become woke because they're unhappy? And that's a fascinating question that would impact our analysis of the findings. But even without having that sorted out, I think we can say a few things here, because really the answer I mean, the answer is both. It's both the chicken and the egg. Wokeness attracts unhappy people, and it also makes people unhappy, and then it also makes unhappy people unhappier. So that's kind of that's the way the cycle works. And
Like, I don't know, if someone is suffering from anxiety, depression, and clinical depression too, I don't think that they're immediately seeking out things that are going to, like, would the first thing be like, I want to learn about the civil rights movement right now. That's now is the time. Now I'm being drawn towards that specifically at this moment due to my clinical depression. So saith the Matt Walsh. But he did do the old, I'm going to lampshade this, aka I'm going to front load this, so anyone who wants to criticize me can obviously point out to this clip or, hey, by the way, I wasn't doing a Mott and Bailey here. I said, does one preclude the other? Does wokeness make one sadder? And the answer is yes, scientifically.
with that in mind, why does it do this? And there are myriad reasons. We're told there's a lot of depression and anxiety in people who agree with the statement that white people have a higher income on average because of racism. Well, why would that be the case? Well, because these ideas destroy agency. They take away your willpower, your free will, your ability to choose your own path in life. Everything is predetermined by the structures of oppression and racism, according to wokeness. So if you're successful, it's because of racism. If you're not successful, it's because of racism.
It's just not true, though, because this is why I'd say Republicans and the right love people like Ben Carson, because Ben Carson, you can say he is someone who shouldn't be in the position that he's in. He shouldn't have been able to have risen to the ranks to become one of the world's top brain surgeons, but he has, and he did so in spite of being black, which disproves the entire idea that you can't make it if you don't try hard enough. Every other black person just isn't trying hard enough. That's basically what the lesson should be. And so this is going to go and impart this upon, every single other right-winger who wants to talk about this. And obviously they usually say the same thing. It's the pick yourself up by your bootstraps thing, which if you visualize the metaphor in your head would hurt you.
And that means that for the white person, this creates a sense of guilt, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of passiveness, of shame. And for the black person, it's also passiveness, helplessness, resentment, hatred, scorn.
He's not wrong, actually. The entire reason I started this show was just to absolve myself of white guilt every day. And by the end of it, I'm like, oh, yes, did 2% less white guilt achieved. Achievement unlocked. Finally.
That's what all of this creates. Feeling like you aren't in control, feeling entirely swept along by the currents. I mean, that's really the source of all anxiety. At some level, I would argue. And
that's the source of all anxiety. Cool.
Wokeness breeds that feeling. It is that feeling. The removal of human agency is the whole point. It's the whole point of it. There's always this question of, well, how do you define wokeness? And I mean, really, wokeness is just the word we're using for leftism. It's just a new term.
Thank you. Someone finally admitted it. Someone finally just said it out loud. Yeah, we're replacing it for thing we don't like. Yeah. Wokeness equals things we don't like. So when there's a movie, if the movie happens to have a black Jedi, that's thing I don't like. Even a black Sith Lord. Yeah, even if they're the villain. I don't want black people to be the villains either, okay? They wouldn't be able to rise to those ranks. Oops, no, wait, that's the thing that I'm saying about. Okay, so if they worked hard and they really, really actually wanted to, if they picked themselves up from their bootstraps, they could become Sith Lords. So really, I think it's probably a cultural thing as to why they're not doing that. Probably explains it.
I'd be fine going back to talking about leftism, but if you want to come up with a definition of it, you could do worse than this. It's the effort to remove human agency. To take
I love that woke means so many things to the right, though. It's like it's everything we don't like. So that encompasses a lot of different things. Yeah. So wokeness is removing agency. Yes, from minorities. That's it. Minorities, they're being told that they have no control over their lives by the left. They're being told that your entire life is predetermined from the moment you wake up till the moment you die. And it's like the people who are usually identifying a lot of this, especially people who happen to maybe invent an entire field of study, sociology, something like that. And I'm talking about black Americans in this case, like Du Bois, pointing out how society treats people differently based on, again, maybe the amount of melanin in your skin. There's nothing in that statement that is, oh, by the way, white people are evil. white people are inherently evil. Oh, but yeah, that's how this works. It's a zero-sum game, right? So if something bad is happening to one group of people, that means the other group is inherently all evil, and every single white person is. Yeah, white babies especially, they're the most racist of all babies. Yeah.
Way to take away human agency from all aspects of life. And then what do you get in exchange for it? So you give up your sense of agency, your sense that like you are, at least to some significant degree, responsible for your own place in life. You take that away, and then what do you get in exchange? I mean, you end up depressed, passive, resentful, guilt-ridden, emasculated, all of that. So that's one thing you get.
It's forced feminization. That's what wokeness is. It forces men to be emasculated, you know, to all of a sudden have feelings. Empathy. Empathy is a virus. It has to be rooted out, all right? Do not start to become in tune with the suffrage or feelings or experiences of other people, okay? Don't ever do that.
But do you get any benefit from it? Like, why do people fall into this, given that it makes them so unhappy? Well, as you know, Easter is just around the corner. Instead of
I don't know what he's selling here. I'm kind of curious. Lux Blocks. Oh, he's selling toys. Oh, that's cool.
Right here in America, they wanted to create something that positively empowered kids to think, create, and dream big. So whether you're looking for a gift for a child who loves to...
Oh, God. Same guy who was selling a Sweet Baby Gang his diaper fetish dolls to children.
That's what people are really after. That's all the victimology and everything. That's what it's really about. On the individual level, the reason why people find it attractive is, yes, it makes them depressed, anxious, everything else. Yes, it removes purpose and meaning from life. It makes life basically pointless, but it also it gives you an excuse. And so wherever you are in life, it's not your fault. You can just find your victim group that you belong to, because anyone can find one. You know, if you're white, you don't get to be in the black victim group, but you can find another victim group to fall into. LGBT is always there, the ever-expanding alphabet. You can find a place somewhere in there. And then it gives you an excuse. Wherever you are in life, whatever your faults are, whatever your shortcomings, whatever aspects of your life that you're dealing with that you don't like, it's not your fault. You know, nothing is your fault. And now, the way that I'm wired, and I think any healthy person is wired, is I'd rather go the other way. Okay. Like I'd rather err on the opposite extreme. I'd rather take blame for things that like aren't even my fault. I would rather have, you know, I would rather go the other way in seeing that things are under my control when they really aren't. I'd rather, if I have to err on one side or the other, I'd rather be on that side, because the idea of having no agency, of not being in control of my life at all, is deeply unappealing to me. So if I'm in a bad spot in life, or I'm dealing with something, and someone comes along and says, "Well, that's all your fault," I would rather think it's all entirely my fault, even if there are aspects of it that really aren't. Even if there are aspects of it that are out of my control, I'd rather accept that.
I mean, cool story, bro. No one is saying that no one has agency. The left is not saying that. It's like a gross mischaracterization of having someone point out to you, hey, there's different lived experiences to different folk. That's very different than no one has agency, though. You have no control over your own life. No, unfortunately, a predetermined set of things, racism, will stop you from achieving anything. So until we get rid of those things, you can't do shit. And it's like, that's not true at all, though. It's just like, we should also identify that certain things exist within society, and we can work towards changing them. Absolutely, we can. Are black communities over-policed? Are black communities using drugs at the same rate as white people? It turns out, yes, they are. But if they're over-policed, if they have more police encounters, and those police encounters, because of, again, a lot of prejudice and racism, are going to have more frequency of having police encounters where individuals will get arrested, detained, and once they get into the criminal justice system, they might not come from as wealthy families who can hire lawyers who might be able to post bail, stuff like that, and then they will get higher sentencing on average, all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, that's a structural problem, right? It doesn't mean that if you're a black person, you can't achieve all you can't live the American dream. Many black people have lived the quote unquote American dream, and many indigenous people have quote unquote lived the American dream. But that doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot of racism towards those groups. What about even being hired, right? The very idea of like, hey, by the way, I'm going to put down my resume. My name is John. The whitest name of all, John Michael John. Yes, the whitest name that has ever existed, John Michael John. And I put my resume down, and then someone has a black sounding name, and they put their resume down. Well, on average, the person with the black sounding name isn't going to get as many callbacks as the person who has John Michael John on the resume itself. That's kind of fucked up. That's something that we can identify, point out. It looks like statistically this bears out in data. So that's something that maybe we could work towards changing, even though I know DEI is all but completely destroyed now thanks to the right. And they're attacking every single reversal of any of the very racist policies of the United States, say things and victories that were made during the civil rights movement. They're trying to roll it all back just to get closer and closer to their dream of just having everyone fend for themselves. I mean, why live in a society at all? Why even have a structure? Why collectively try and pool resources together to try and make everyone's life better? You know, I mean, we should all be responsible for our own water supply. We should all be responsible for our own food supply. We should all be responsible for our own hospitals. We should all build, like, is the idea of Ancapistan that every single house is also just a mini city? Like, if you've done well and you've played by the rules and you've worked hard, you should be able to have your own school, your own hospital, your own grocery store, your own farm to be able to pack that grocery store, and I guess a team of people working for you. And then every single person has their own little kind of like a fiefdom, if you will. And then you can be the lord of that. Like, I feel like you're just trying to, you're reverting to serfdom if you're trying to advocate for these kind of things, right? Personally, I find compassion and empathy sexy, which Matt is definitely not. Yeah, well, I mean, this guy has fucking negative sex appeal.
And realize that I have agency over my life. I'd rather accept that and retain a sense of agency than take the excuse and say, oh, it's not my fault at all, and lose that sense of agency. But I think for people who fall into the woke cult, they just getting that excuse is incredibly appealing to them, and they'll give up everything just to have the excuse.
I'm not going to discount that people can't be annoying. They can. And especially online. You might see a lot of discourses that start up where you're like, this can't be real. This has to be a fed. This has to be someone who's legitimately trying to like make everyone fight each other rather than actually talk about issues that matter. That can happen. People can obviously take things too far. I'm sure we've all seen the embarrassing DSA committee meeting where a bunch of people were sitting there and they didn't actually get anything done because everyone was asking for a point of privilege. And then someone was saying that clapping apparently was ableist. And so they were saying, well, okay, instead of clapping, please just acknowledge with a snap of your fingers, perhaps, or like a hum or things like that. And that's like the version, I suppose, of anyone who wants to learn about, say, like the civil rights movement. That's the cartoonish character that they always tell you, right? Everyone's got blue or pink hair. They're all debating about whether or not DoorDash is ableist. They're not allowed to applaud because if they do, that's ableist. All that kind of stuff. And that's basically why they're all sad and depressed, is because they're just trying to have the oppression Olympics one amongst another and talk about who's the most oppressed. But that's just not in terms of, broadly speaking, reality at all. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning about problems with the system or the structure itself that you live in. You were born into it. That's the good news. It's not something that you created. You didn't invent colonization. You didn't invent imperialism. You didn't invent capitalism. All these things were already in place when you were born into this world. You are not born with original sin, unlike what the Catholics would have you believe. You don't have original sin. So don't worry. Matt Walsh is wrong on that one. And there's nothing wrong about learning about, hey, at the end of the day, different people can be treated differently in society based on things that we as human beings made up. They're made up. They're not real. I've said this before because, with Nazis or fascists or stuff like that, they ultimately eventually start getting to the whole elimination project aspect of fascism, which is that we have to get rid of everyone who's not considered part of the Übermensch or, what they consider to be the genetically superior master race of humans and all that. And so that usually includes the elimination of everyone they consider inferior, such as Jewish people, such as LGBTQ plus people, stuff like that. And I said, even if you did get rid of all of the LGBTQ plus people, which would be very hard, by the way, because there's a lot of people who are mostly straight who can hide in the shadows, like myself. But like, even if you did it, say for the purposes of a thought experiment, you got rid of all of the queers on planet Earth as part of this disgusting ass extermination project, you know, that a person like Matt Walsh might want to enact. Within a couple decades, you would have all of these queer people again. You know, I mean, granted, unless you were actively trying to eliminate them constantly, but they're just part of the human experience. You're just going to have them appear over and over again. You might be wondering, like, why the hell? I thought we got rid of all the gays, but the gays are back. I don't know how this happened. It must have been a woke mind virus or something, or maybe one of you was secretly gay but didn't tell anyone else because you didn't want to get eliminated. Well, it's just like this is just part of who human beings are. So part of humanity means that you're going to get a percentage of people who might not be cis, percentage of people who might be intersex, percentage of people who might be asexual, percentage of people who might be gay, straight, bisexual, pansexual. All that is just, it's going to happen. It's going to happen naturally, even if you try to get rid of it all, you know?
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also, thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.